It's the most luxurious element on the planet. A metal like no other. The ultimate symbol of wealth and success. Gold. It obsesses us and has captivated cultures around the world throughout history, inspiring legends of lost cities and kings with the Midas touch.
It's beautiful, it's burnished, there's a warmth to gold, something that draws human beings towards it, almost like it sort of warms human nature.
Gold's the most wonderful material, it's malleable, it doesn't decay, so it's very useful as well as very attractive.
And what makes gold especially valuable is its rarity.
It's that sort of Goldilocks thing of being rare enough to tempt people to want it, but not so rare that nobody can have it.
In fact, it's estimated that all the gold extracted from the Earth so far would fit into a 65-foot cube, only a few times bigger than a semi-detached house. Since ancient times, the pursuit of gold has driven engineers to devise new techniques to mine, process, and refine it.
The desire for gold actually led to huge technological and engineering advancements.
Their inventions have shaped modern society.
It established the global markets we have today. It changed the world forever.
And these ancient breakthroughs are still prompting us to cross frontiers, building the deepest mines, creating the latest technology, even venturing into space. But how did these ancient engineers first discover gold's unique properties? There's no clear evidence for when gold was first discovered. The earliest surviving objects in the world date from over 6,000 years ago, from sites in the Black Sea and the Near East. But earlier humans may have found gold long before this. It simply washed up at their feet.
If it's in a riverbed, you'll see the gold glinting. It doesn't rust, it doesn't dissolve in water or do anything, so it's there. It's lying there, it's getting rounded and bumped around a bit, but it's in the riverbed.
It's likely that this river or alluvial gold would have caught the eye of ancient peoples who began to experiment with it.
One could imagine that the very first discovery, when someone picked it up and said, "Hey, look, I can hammer this into a nice object," would have been an alluvial nugget. It's obvious.
But how did it get there? Gold can only be created by extreme energy produced inside rare supernova or the collision of neutron stars. All of the gold on Earth therefore likely comes from outer space. Much of it from meteorites and boulders which slammed into its surface billions of years ago. Most of this gold is buried deep, but some has been brought closer to the Earth's surface around tectonic plates through volcanic activity. Superheated water transports dissolved elements, including gold, up through the crust, where they solidify into hard veins. Over time, as water erodes these veins, tiny pieces wash into rivers. And as gold is one of the least reactive metals, it will not corrode and can stay here indefinitely.
When it comes out the ground, it's as shiny as the day it went in, and I think there is an element of that that's captured the imagination of past societies going way back.
Early gold gathering may simply have been done by hand, but to find gold hidden deeper among the river deposits required a more specialized solution.
The natural progression is to try a basin, whether it was of wood, pottery, early bronze or whatever. You swirl it round, and if you're lucky, there'll be a few little bits of gold glinting in the bottom of the bowl at the end of it. And that's gold panning.
Gold panning was likely ancient man's main extraction method. And alluvial gold is estimated to have provided 2/3 of what was ever produced. Because the panning process is so simple, it has remained a widely used method to this day, facilitating some of the greatest gold rushes of all time.
There was gold for all. Gold seekers were stirred to a frenzy by tales of glory holes and rich diggings.
In 1848, gold was found in California, sparking the famous American Gold Rush. In just over a year, California's population increased from 14,000 to almost 100,000.
Once the news gets out, all hell breaks loose because people want to get it and go for it. It's this optimism and greed going for it.
In their haste to find gold, these prospectors even abandoned their ships in the Bay of San Francisco. Their remnants still lie buried under the financial district. To look for gold, they headed to the mountains, and initially at least, just used simple panning methods to find it.
Panning for gold is an incredibly democratic method. You don't need many resources, you don't need much training or skill.
But this technique is labor-intensive, time-consuming, and it doesn't get you much gold. To find more, the ancients needed to follow the trail underground to reach the mother lode. Few ancient cultures are more associated with gold than the Egyptians. Famed for their elaborate engineering projects, gold was central to Egyptian culture, used for opulent decoration, jewelry, and statues. In fact, the hieroglyph for gold first appeared with the beginning of Egyptian writing in the very first dynasty. The Egyptians believed that gold was the flesh of the sun god Ra, so we're not far off about its stellar origins.
For the Egyptians, gold was associated with divinity, it was associated with creation, it was literally the most significant, powerful object you could imagine.
The ultimate luxury material, gold was coveted in life. But it was just as important in death.
Whether you're a pharaoh or quite an average person, you wanted to have goods to take into the afterworld. You'd need things. Because gold doesn't decay, it was the perfect material to cover a body with, because it would last for eternity, which is what they hoped the body would.
Egypt's geology meant that it naturally had large quantities of gold. But the amounts the Egyptians desired couldn't be found in a river alone. So they opted for a different solution: mining. While they weren't the first to mine gold, the Egyptians certainly took it to a new industrial level. And without modern prospecting methods like remote sensing, locating this so-called gold of the mountain was all down to a simple realization.
Finding gold for the Egyptians rested on the observation that gold was often associated with quartz. So if you followed the quartz, you were more than likely to find the gold.
To access it, these ancient engineers developed tools to help them smash open the rock. If a vein went deeper, they would follow it, digging tunnels and shafts.
This would have been laborious, back-breaking, and terrifying work.
And the scale of Egyptian gold production was unprecedented.
One of the most remarkable survivals connected with gold from the ancient world is not a gold object, but it's a map that actually shows the gold mines.
One of the oldest surviving maps in the world, the Turin Papyrus. It predates equivalent modern geological maps by almost 3,000 years and is one of the first maps to represent real geographical content. But it's what it reveals about the organization of Egyptian gold mining which makes it particularly incredible. Created during the reign of Ramses IV in around 1150 BC, it records many places in the eastern desert where the Egyptian state was mining and processing gold.
Rather than it was a case of sort of this is how you get to the mines, I think it was some sort of bureaucratic use for the map, to keep a record of the mines and maybe their output or how many slaves you had working.
And when archaeologists in the 1980s started to map ancient Egypt's gold mines, what they found was staggering. Up to 250 of them scattered across the eastern desert. While today, mechanical diggers bear the brunt of mining work, in ancient times, this process was labor-intensive, requiring thousands of paid workers, or sometimes slaves, to mine and process the gold-laden rock. Over time, they developed millstones to crush small pieces of quartz ore to a fine powder. And once ground, the Egyptians devised various ways to separate the gold from the rock. One of these was a technique known as winnowing. The finely ground gold ore was shaken inside a dry blanket to create pulses of air which separated the rock from the gold. This movement also created a static charge which stuck the gold to the fabric. So when the blanket was opened, the rock dust would blow away, leaving just the gold.
This was something they'd used anyway with crops. What you would use is either a blanket or a basket, and you'd throw them up. And you just throw it up, and the wind would carry away the chaff, and you'd be left with the wheat. And it's the same principle that they're using to separate out really, really small particles of gold from small particles of dust.
But winnowing wasn't the only way. Where water was accessible, the Egyptians engineered another, even more effective method: washing tables. The ground powder and water would be poured down a slanting table. Materials, like sheep's wool, spread over it, would catch the heavier gold particles, while lighter rock would be washed away. And to ensure no gold was missed, over time, sophisticated circulation systems were developed to feed the runoff back to the start.
Wool has sort of residual oils and lanolin in it. So as you're washing in the wool, what's happening in that process is that the heavier gold is being trapped within the wool. Now, once you've achieved that, it's a very simple step to drying it out and then burning off the wool to leave the gold residues.
Also used to catch gold in streams, it's possible that the use of sheep's wool may even have inspired the famous Greek myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece. Today, electric-powered machines now do what thousands of Egyptian workers once did, crushing the rock and washing it on shaker tables. Capable of processing up to 2 tons of gold-laden rock per hour. The Egyptians' thirst for gold was so great, from as early as 2000 BC, they even sought to control their neighbors to the south, in modern-day Sudan. Known in ancient times as Nubia, it was the gold center of the ancient world, its opulent objects reflecting its wealth of natural gold. Wall paintings record how wars were fought to control these gold-rich territories, and how Nubians were made to bring tributes of gold to the pharaoh.
And we have one wonderful thing with the pharaoh saying he commanded the chiefs of Nubia to mine gold. I think you just couldn't get enough of it.
Almost 3,000 years ago, during the 12th dynasty, the Egyptians even built a system of highly fortified mud brick strongholds on the Nile to police this trade and ensure a constant supply.
It was a huge enterprise from both ensuring you had the access to the mines, ensuring that the locals were playing ball with it, and then the bureaucracy to cope with it and deal with it.
But to turn raw gold into objects, ancient engineers needed to melt it into more workable forms. And there was a problem.
So to melt gold, you need to be able to create these really high temperatures, right? Now, if you're burning with just a standard wood fire, you wouldn't get that temperature.
An ordinary wood fire burns at only around 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas gold's melting point is several hundred degrees higher. So to increase the heat, the ancient engineers turned to even older methods, devised for producing another metal entirely. From at least as early as the 6th millennium BC, in societies across the Eastern Mediterranean and Near East, techniques had been developed for pottery production and to melt other metals, such as copper. For these purposes, ancient smiths created furnaces, and instead of wood, they powered them using charcoal.
Charcoal is a very, very good fuel. An awful lot of heat in it, and it's very pure too, so it doesn't contaminate.
As this technology spread, soon charcoal was used to melt gold too. Egyptian reliefs reveal how the process was refined, using blowpipes to increase the heat even further. The first pipes were likely just hollow reeds, but as these burned easily, fire-resistant clay tubes began to be used instead. However, they were still not particularly efficient and often required several people all blowing at once.
The problem with using your own lungs is that actually you're already extracting some of the oxygen from the air that you're blowing out, and what the fire needs is oxygen. So just sitting there with blowpipes, trying to get the heat up, actually isn't the most effective way within which you want to actually roast down that gold.
So for large-scale gold production, the ancients hit upon a better idea: the pot bellow. To make the bellow, animal hide was stretched over a wide clay pot. When the surface of the hide was pushed down, it forced air out into the furnace. To replenish the supply, the hide was lifted and air flowed in through a valve. Pot bellows could be operated by alternate feet, meaning that only a single operator was needed to produce a continuous air supply.
It's a very effective way of doing it. I mean, the later versions, like the fellows you used to see beside every fireplace with the sort of 2 bits of wood and you pumped. I mean, that's just a later version of it. So it's not complicated, but it's very effective. I mean, I feel like it's engineering with very simple materials.
Bellows were a major development. Whereas blowpipes could supply around 4.5 gallons of air per minute, pot bellows could deliver around 10 times that.
The more air you can get into the fire, the hotter the flame.
This greater efficiency meant that more and more gold could be extracted on an industrial scale. Furnaces and bellows have evolved through history, but without these early inventions, it's fair to say the developments which shaped modern industry may never have happened.
These early breakthroughs directly led to the invention of the coke-fueled blast furnace, which allowed you to smelt iron and turn it into steel, powering the Industrial Revolution.
In a sense, you could look at the sort of a modern motorcar factory and sort of draw a line right back to the first guy with a furnace for pottery in wherever it was.
Now the ancient engineers could melt gold. This opened up brand new design possibilities. Melted gold could be made or cast into different solid shapes through a technique known as the lost wax method. This involved first making a model out of wax, and then entirely covering it in clay, except for a single hole. When the object was baked, the clay hardened and the wax strained away. Molten metal could then be poured into it, creating an exact replica of the original. Once the ancient engineers could cast gold, they could let their imaginations run wild. Gold could now be made into jewelry, created into objects to adorn palaces and temples, and even placed in tombs. But incredibly, the earliest known example of cast gold is from a tomb which predates even the pharaohs. Recent analysis of finds discovered in Bulgaria in the 1970s could rewrite the history books. Varna, on the Black Sea, is home to the oldest surviving funerary hoard of gold objects on the planet. Dating to around 4,550 BC, these were created by a mysterious society only a few centuries after the first farmers came to Europe from the East. And it's unprecedented in scale, with over 3,000 gold artifacts.
Little is actually known about this society, but the majority of the objects were discovered in just 5 graves, and that suggests that they had an elaborate social hierarchy.
Although Varna's gold objects were long thought to have been hammered from raw gold nuggets, recent analysis suggests that some were in fact cast from melted gold, making it potentially the earliest known example of this technique anywhere on the planet. Many ancient cultures, particularly in South and Central America where gold was abundant, also produced gold objects this way, giving rise to legends of entire golden cities, which enticed European explorers. It's a method still widely used in the modern world, with applications in many industries, not least gold crowns in dentistry. And it's one of the most common ways of mass-producing jewelry. Though now there's a twist. Instead of laboriously carving wax by hand, 3D printers are now often used to sculpt the master mold in resin, a modern update on an ancient method.
Today, you go down the high street, the vast majority of jewellery is produced by casting, because it's quick, it's easy, it's efficient, and you can do it on a huge scale.
But to cast larger solid objects out of gold is expensive. So to make this precious material go further, the ancient engineers turned to another of gold's unique properties: its malleability.
Pure gold is infinitely malleable. In other words, you can carry on hammering, bending, hammering, and it never breaks.
You can squash it. You can take your little ingot of gold, you can wallop it with a hammer, and it will spread out into a thin sheet.
Ancient Egyptian wall paintings illustrate how workers beat the gold with a round stone to make it flat. And such gold had a number of uses. Famously, in one of the 20th century's most incredible archaeological discoveries. Uncovered in 1922 by Howard Carter, the tomb of boy pharaoh Tutankhamun was one of the most lavish of all time, containing over 5,000 objects, many of them gold. But his funerary mask is its glorious centerpiece, only made possible because of gold's malleability.
Of course, one of the great benefits of using sheet gold to create something is that it can be hollow. So when you think of it, I mean, Tutankhamun's mask is obviously thin gold. It's not solid head. So you've got this hollow inside, so it looks more than it is.
Created from 2 sheets, softly hammered into shape, the mask perfectly enclosed the pharaoh's head and shoulders, giving him the golden skin of a god for eternity.
Only with gold could they create such unparalleled detail, the finest of facial features.
But such extravagant use of gold was not practical for anything less than a pharaoh's funeral. So to make it go even further, the ancient engineers came up with a plan. They simply kept hammering it.
It's a very simple mathematical progression. The thinner you hammer the gold, the bigger area you can cover with it. There must have been a push to get the gold thinner and thinner and thinner.
The ancient engineers discovered that hammering sheet gold for long enough produced a gold foil, roughly as thin as a newspaper page, which they could then pin or stick to an object using an adhesive.
You can pick it up and wrap it round whatever it is you're trying to gild, so to speak.
But gold's malleability could take it even further. If this foil was beaten between sheets of animal hide to stop it cracking, it could be made so thin it could create a brand new material. Gold leaf. Gold this thin could be used to gild much larger surfaces, making objects appear as if made of solid gold.
Because it is so soft, it is able to go into every little interstice, and this makes it self-adhering. The 2 surfaces are so intimately bonded together, they are becoming cohesive.
The Roman author Pliny the Elder wrote that a single ounce of pure gold could be beaten out into 750 leaves or more. That's the equivalent of under 1 micron in thickness, over 70 times thinner than a human hair. Today, with modern methods, gold can be made even thinner for yet more diverse purposes, such as makeup or even to decorate food.
Goodness knows why people would eat gold leaf other than for issues of prestige, but it's an inert substance. It's relatively safe to eat, provided it's in small enough particles, and it will pass out the other end, I guess.
In several Eastern religions, including Buddhism, gold is believed to symbolize knowledge or purity. And gold leaf is still produced the traditional way, to cover many sacred objects, from statues to giant holy rocks. It can even be used to coat entire buildings and make them appear as though made of solid gold. The Shwedagon Pagoda. This Buddhist stupa, or sacred ornament, is believed to contain the relics of Buddha himself. And at over 300 feet high, it towers above the city of Yangon in Myanmar. Whereas gold in other ancient cultures was often found inside temples, this building is thought to be solid and cannot be entered. Its gold is likely all displayed on the outside.
The Shwedagon Pagoda in Myanmar is one of the most revered shrines in Buddhism. There's a legend that golden nuggets rained down from the sky and they were used to build the pagoda.
But in reality, only its surface is made of gold. It is almost entirely covered in gold leaf. And as this material can't be produced in very large sheets, creating this effect was a challenge. Small copper tiles 12 inches squared had to be individually covered. Over 22,000 of these gilded tiles were then attached to the pagoda, creating the effect of a single solid gold building. But this presents a major conservation issue today.
The use of gold on the Shwedagon Pagoda isn't particularly effective. I mean, it looks absolutely amazing and it glistens under the sun, but it isn't particularly resistant to weather and climate, so it does need replacing quite regularly.
The gold leaf flakes off at such a rate, it actually needs replacing every 4 to 5 years. But this is not a problem at another, more state-of-the-art golden building. The Matra Mandir, opened in 2008 in Auroville, India. It's an edifice dedicated to yogic philosophy. Here, the architects made their tiles by sandwiching gold leaf between plates of glass, thus creating a more lasting golden structure. As goldsmithing spread through the ancient world, the innovation of ancient engineers led to even more breakthroughs, some of which are still impacting us today.
A lot of the ingenuity in ancient jewellery comes in things like how it was fastened together. And so you start getting some quite interesting techniques that are fundamental in the history of engineering.
The chain and the spring, vital in almost every modern industry. But there's growing evidence to suggest that these and other inventions may owe their origin to ancient jewelry manufacturing.
The earliest examples I know of the nut and bolt, a screw, which is fundamental whether you want to build a bridge or a motor car or anything these days. That dates back to probably late Roman times when they're using exactly the same principle as a way to fasten some gold bracelets, the screw thread.
All these innovations actually are so crucial to our world today, but they only came about because they wanted to find new ways of wearing gold.
But the pursuit of gold has not only been about jewelry and decoration. The real game changer came with the invention of money. And it was ancient engineers who transformed the element of gold into the world's first coinage currency.
In the earliest days, there wasn't coinage. I mean, in human history, it's a relatively late introduction coinage. There was obviously barter. I make a loaf of bread and I swap it for the person next door's cabbage, and this sort of thing went on.
But as societies became more sophisticated, bartering systems weren't enough.
Bartering and exchange is very limited because it depends on both sides wanting the same thing. But money itself changes everything because it has its own intrinsic value.
Over time, valuable metals started to become a means of basic exchange. In Egypt, payments were often made with large gold rings, and some cultures simply used pieces of broken-up metal. But these early currencies had their drawbacks.
The problem with this is that the purity of gold varied according to where it had been mined. It's important to remember that when gold is discovered in the ground, it's never pure. It's always an alloy. It contains other metals, such as silver. So there was no standardization. There was no way of guaranteeing the content of the gold that was being exchanged.
Most gold in circulation until the end of the Bronze Age varied between 70 and 85% purity. So ancient engineers began to develop new ways of refining gold to make it purer.
Now we begin to find references to gold that's described as gold of 1 or 2 times, or 3 times in one case. Because if you melt gold, a little bit of the other metal will oxidize and go away. So every time you melt gold, it gets a little bit purer.
To confirm a piece of gold's value before a transaction, various methods were also devised to check its purity. One method was a touchstone. When drawn on with a sample of gold, these would show a clear streak of color, which could then be compared to a reliable sample of gold. Touchstones are quick, easy, and portable, but as they only check the surface of an object, they're also limited.
If the surface has been enhanced, then you'll not find out what the true composition of the interior is.
Fire assaying was a more reliable method. Like refining, it also involved heating the gold to draw out impurities, which could determine the actual gold content. But fire assaying also had drawbacks, as melting it destroyed the original gold object. Neither method was perfect. But in approximately 550 BC, around the time of the ancient Greeks, in a region of modern-day Turkey known as Lydia, a local ruler in its capital, Sardis, found a solution, creating the world's first standardized currency. Earlier Lydian kings had created a basic coinage using electrum, an alloy containing both gold and silver. But a king called Croesus created a new, more reliable monetary system, consisting of gold and silver coins with a standardized purity.
This was crucial for the development of gold coinage because you knew exactly how much gold each coin contained.
At first, Croesus used fairly pure gold panned in nearby rivers. But when this ran out, he started to import less pure gold and turned to his engineers to find an effective way to refine it.
He hasn't got any intrinsic pure gold anymore, so he has to call in the lads and sort of say, we've got a problem, we've got to get to a constant purity.
In order to remove the silver, Croesus's engineers developed a more sophisticated way of refining, known as salt parting. A dry cement of brick dust mixed with salt was laid inside a pottery container. Thin sheets of impure gold were then laid on top and layered with the cement until the pot was full. It was then heated at a low temperature for several days. During the heating, salt vapors would attack the impure gold and remove the silver content. The result? Almost 99% pure gold. Coins were then produced at a set weight of just under 0.3 ounces. And with each coin punched with a lion, Lydia's emblem, this currency could be traded with confidence. By harnessing money, Croesus became one of the richest men in the world, giving rise to the expression "as rich as Croesus," and turning Lydia into the business capital of the world.
I think Croesus's sort of genius, if you like, was to realize that if you refine this gold before you made the coinage, you would have a standard, and other countries would recognize it.
Over time, coinage allowed bigger and more sophisticated trading markets to develop.
The invention of money absolutely transformed society. It changed the way we go about business. It changed the way that we relate to each other.
The invention of money created the modern financial world as we know it. Gold and silver were the basis for currencies around the planet for centuries. Nowadays, they have largely been replaced by coins with lower intrinsic value. But many countries still have a gold reserve, kept under lock and key just in case.
It's a finite resource, and in that sense, it always holds its value. I mean, in times of political and financial crisis, that's what you want in your reserves. You don't want pieces of paper with money stamped on them. You want bars of gold.
Today, gold is often exchanged online by people who have never even seen it. It's closer to cryptocurrency than real money. But unlike some crypto coins, digital gold retains its worth, while monetary values fluctuate. But real gold was what counted most in ancient times. For the ancient Romans, gold coinage was vital. As the empire expanded, the Roman emperors needed money for a number of reasons. For paying soldiers, and to create a unified empire trading under a single currency. But coinage also had another function.
Coinage became really important as a propaganda tool. You could actually put your face on the coinage, and that was so important because it reminded everyone who was in charge.
And gold coinage had a very exclusive purpose.
It's the value of this coin which enables the Roman Republic and later the Roman emperors to bribe effectively anybody they want to bring within the empire.
With demand for gold increasing, the Romans took it from anywhere, often seizing it from conquered peoples and melting it down. But they also came up with inventive ways to get their hands on greater supplies of gold from the ground. In the newly conquered territory of northwest Spain, at Las Medulas, brilliant Roman engineers supercharged their mining using a technique called hushing, where water power was used to blast away vast quantities of earth.
Water can do a huge amount of damage to any hillside, mountainside. You know, its power of pressure, its surge power, it can destroy large forms of landmass, which is of course what miners want. They want to kind of remove all of that material so you can extract the metal ores.
To ensure a large enough supply of water, the Roman engineers used one of their most famous innovations.
The Romans were outstanding water engineers, and one of their finest inventions of all was the aqueduct.
Aqueducts were vital for Roman cities, transporting fresh water for drinking, bathing, and sanitation. To ensure a constant flow of water at Las Medulas, the Romans expertly designed several aqueducts to transport it from as far away as 90 miles. Built to hug the contours of the mountains, they maintained a very gradual downward gradient, bringing the water to holding tanks above areas of rich gold deposits. These aqueducts could deliver between 1.7 and 3.2 billion cubic feet of water a year, the volume of over 20,000 Olympic swimming pools. To reach gold deep inside the rock, a network of shafts and tunnels would be dug down into it. And when all was ready, the sluice gates were opened, releasing water into the shafts and tunnels, which blew the rock face clean off through sheer force.
The Romans were masters of controlling water. They understood the volume, the velocity. They knew exactly how to use it. And in effect, this is the equivalent of blasting in a modern quarry.
But the Romans didn't only use water for mining. They also used it to pioneer new ways to process gold. At another ancient Roman gold mine in Dragoceni, West Wales, a unique monolith has long caused a mystery.
It's called the Pump Sant stone, Five Saints stone, because the story is, you know, that these five saints, sort of feeling tired, went to sleep against this stone and created these five depressions.
But clues in the surrounding landscape revealed its possible function: telltale water channels and the remains of a probable water wheel. Archaeologists realized the stone had to be the base of an early type of trip hammer, a device used to grind gold-bearing rocks. In order to power a trip hammer, flowing water would rotate a water wheel, which in turn drove a camshaft. The camshaft turned rotational movement into vertical power, driving a series of stamps which pounded the rock into tiny pieces against a stone anvil. The basis for the modern car engine, camshafts were always assumed to be a much later invention, but the discovery of the pumice stone turns that theory on its head.
Up until its discovery, we always thought that kind of technology was only around in the medieval period, but this stone serves as an anvil, and it dates firmly to the Roman period. I mean, they really were innovators in the use of water power.
Such sophisticated methods led to a massive expansion of the gold industry in Roman times.
Roman gold mining was of an industrial scale, and you can find it across the entire Roman Empire, all the way from Britain through to Syria and North Africa and Greece and Turkey.
But this came at a great cost. The legacy of these hydraulic mining methods is laid bare in the landscape of Las Medulas. During its 250-year operation, to reach gold, the Romans removed almost 18 billion cubic feet of rock.
The water had been released by the Romans in such velocity and in such volume, it's carved canyons through the mountainside.
This process made Las Medulas Rome's principal gold mine, but it devastated the landscape. It's easy to see why the Romans may have named this Runa Montium, or the wrecking of mountains. Today, some modern mining practices can be just as catastrophic for the environment and for mankind. Heap leaching is a processing technique using cyanide to dissolve out particles of gold from its host rock. It can process millions of tons of gold-laden rock every year, but it has the potential to cause devastating environmental issues as the cyanide is prone to leaking, polluting rivers, and poisoning human water supplies. Throughout history, we've sought to mine gold from deeper and deeper underground, often at huge human expense. An ancient technique called fire setting was used right up to the Middle Ages. It involved a miner having to light a fire underground. Its heat would then weaken and crack the rock. But it was dangerous and unpredictable, often leading to sudden collapse. An invention of the 19th century revolutionized mining: dynamite. The brainchild of Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel, dynamite used 19th century advances in chemical engineering to blow apart rock. It was more controllable than fire setting, allowing miners to lay the explosives and then detonate them from a safe distance. And it allowed them to access more gold than ever before. Gold mines could now run so deep that in South Africa, the miners of the 1886 gold rush could access the Witwatersrand Basin, the world's largest known gold field. These mines have since become some of the most productive on Earth, turning Johannesburg into the gold capital of the world, allowing South Africa to create the deepest mines on the planet.
The Mponeng mine in South Africa is the deepest gold mine in the world. It is ridiculously deep. It is 4.5 times the height of the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa.
But such a wealth of gold has not always been possible to find. Despite sophisticated mining methods, gold was still rare and valuable in ancient times. So to satisfy high demand, engineers came up with another solution: gold plating. To make this, the ancient engineers turned to another metal with a very unique property: mercury. Also known as quicksilver, mercury's speed and fluidity were why the Romans named it after their messenger god. But it was what happened when it came into contact with gold which most intrigued them.
When liquid mercury touches gold, it literally eats the gold and it binds chemically with it.
It amalgamates, so what you wind up with is what is known as butter of mercury, or butter of gold.
Ancient engineers discovered that this pliable butter could be used to coat other cheaper metals, like silver or copper. When heated to 650 degrees Fahrenheit, the mercury burned away, leaving just the gold, now bound to the other metal underneath.
This was the first form of gold plating, and it was so effective that it was widespread right up until the 19th century.
But mercury carries many health risks for those exposed to it. Nowadays, new, safer, and more sophisticated plating techniques have gradually been introduced.
Modern gold plating is extraordinary. I mean, it's high science. And there's even debate whether you should actually be able to call it gold plating because there's so little actual gold there.
These plating advancements means that gold is now finding brand new applications, vital ones for our changing world. Its flexibility and high conductivity make it a useful material for key electrical components like circuit boards and contacts.
It can be used on connection boards, in SIM cards, in laptops, in so many of your devices and gadgets.
Its ability to be coated very thin keeps manufacturing costs low, while its non-corrosiveness means our electronic devices are less likely to let us down.
What many people don't realize is that gold is used in just about every electronic device that we use today. So we need gold to live the lives that we lead.
And as it's also highly reflective, such thin gold has become vital for space exploration. Used since the first men stepped foot on the moon, it protects sensitive equipment from the sun's radiation.
It's now possible to get gold so thin that you can see through it, so it's even used to coat astronauts' visors.
And gold's reflectivity has also made it vital for a very special mission. 1.69 ounces of the purest gold now coats the mirrors of the James Webb Telescope, which launched in December 2021.
This is not a normal telescope. This is the most sophisticated engineering you can imagine. They're going to the very depths of space.
Gold's exceptional ability to reflect should allow this honeycomb of mirrors to focus enough light to image some of the earliest stars ever created. Perhaps even the very stars which once formed gold itself. Gold has come a long way since ancient peoples first panned for it in rivers and streams with their bare hands. Modern advancements in gold mining and manufacturing stand on the shoulders of these ancient engineers. Their innovations have prompted us to dig deeper, to purify and refine, and to explore gold's infinite possibilities. Without them, and this most mesmerizing metal, the world economy, our societies, and deep space exploration may not exist as we know it.